Click the subscribe button, hit the bell icon to never miss another update.
The hot afternoon sun of Medina was beating down on everyone as they worked tirelessly. You see, Prophet Muhammad had ordered all the people of Medina to build a large trench around the city to protect themselves from the polytheists of Mecca who were coming to attack the Muslims. Everyone was hungry and thirsty, but they all knew they had to work fast. If you were in Medina that day, all you would hear were the loud sounds of shovels and pickaxes hitting the dirt. You would see some people picking and throwing rocks, while others dug up the ground. But the most beautiful sight you would have seen was the Holy Prophet working right alongside the men, guiding and encouraging them. Everyone was on high alert as the army was almost approaching. They had been working very hard over the last couple of days to finish on time. After many more hours of digging, the last soldier finally yelled out, "Tell the Prophet we are done! We are finally done!" The soldiers rushed the Prophet and told him the good news. The Prophet praised Allah for all his support. He then called out to all the soldiers to be aware, since the Meccans could come in at any time. All the soldiers began walking home to prepare themselves for the war. Not too long later, each soldier came out of his home dressed in war clothes. The Prophet walked to the edge of the trench and saw a large cloud of dust in the distance. Suddenly, he felt the earth shake below him. The enemy was approaching. The Prophet looked at his army. They were very tired and hungry, but as the enemy was approaching, they had no choice but to prepare themselves for a difficult war. The Prophet himself had not eaten in 3 days and was just as hungry as his soldiers. However, the Prophet kept a steady eye on the arriving enemy. Not too far in the distance, you could see the women of Medina coming out of their homes, each scared and worried, as they clutched their children tightly. They all prayed to Allah for the Muslim army to be successful against the enemies. However, while everyone else was worried about their husband, wife, or children, there was one person in the crowd whose heart was worried only about the Prophet of Islam. This person was Fatima Zahra, the loyal and loving daughter of the Prophet. She loved her father, the Prophet, so much, and it hurt her very much knowing how hungry he was. Fatima was also known as Umme Abiha, the mother of her father, because she not only loved him deeply, but because she always took care of him. As she thought about him in the battlefield, she couldn't help but wonder how tired and hungry he must be. She couldn't take it any longer. She rushed home and ran straight to the kitchen. "Oh Allah, please help me to make the best food for my father," she thought to herself, but all she could find in the house was some flour. What could she do with just flour? Suddenly, a great idea came to her mind. She quickly turned on the fire and warmed the oven. Fatima kneaded the flour into dough and began making small circular pieces of bread. As she finished baking the bread, she was a little upset. She thought to herself, "Is this really all I can give to my father?" She swallowed hard and held back her tears. However, remembering how hungry her father was, she quickly wrapped the bread in a red cloth and headed towards the battlefield. As Fatima was walking towards the battlefield, the thoughts of her hungry father kept pushing her to move quicker. The blistering sun of Medina was beating down on her face, but you could hear the sound of the army, so she knew she was close. She saw that some of the enemies had made it across the trench and were already at war with her father's army. When the Prophet saw Fatima, he quickly got off his horse and walked towards her. The Prophet leaned down with kindness in his eyes and greeted her. Fatima happily uncovered the cloth with the bread, which was still warm, and put them before her father. He smiled and asked, "Where did you get this from?" Fatima answered warmly, "I baked them for you, O father." The Prophet took a whiff of Fatima's sweet bread, gently broke off a piece, and took a bite. His face lit up with joy, and he said to his loving daughter, "O Fatima, this is the sweetest bread I have ever tasted. Your bread is the first bite of food that I have had in 3 days." Fatima smiled from ear to ear and hugged her father. They then bid each other farewell, and Fatima watched her father walk back towards his horse. As she watched him ride off to the battlefield, she couldn't help but notice that he looked stronger, taller and more vibrant than the burning Medina sun.